Hello, hello, hello. This is AJT500 slash download to track 98, or in this case, Hello is Wonderwise. Um, and in this video, I kind of want to do something a bit different. I want to go through Alexander Ultimate and focus on tank and specifically Dark Knight related things for this fight. Um, I think Dark Knight is really strong in this fight, and I think he can do a lot of unique things that I kind of want to highlight that I kind of figured out as I was progressing through this fight. Um, so we're kind of just gonna get into it, um, and yeah, I think the first thing I want to mention though is actually skill speed. There's a lot of different skill speed tiers for Dark Knight out there. Um, I originally started with 2.38 when I went into this fight, but I ended up settling on 2.39 because I wanted a little bit more direct hit. Um, I also don't think I needed as much things in my opener as I originally thought. That's the reason why I went with 2.38, so I could double weave a whole bunch of stuff. I kind of went into this fight with I want to use a standard opener, um, but by the end, I don't think that's really the best way to approach it. I think timing things in this fight so that they line up consistently well throughout the fight is the best way to go, and that doesn't look standard when you actually do it. So that's kind of something I wanted to start with first. Going into it, I'm just gonna let this opener kind of play out for a second, and then we'll kind of go back. There'll be a lot of pausing, and I'm sorry if this is kind of rambly, but um, there's a lot of things I want to talk about. So I kind of just want this opener to play out, and then I want to go back and I'll show you um, kind of how I went into planning this opener, because this isn't the first opener. This is like the fifth that I decided on. So, all right, so that's pretty much that. So let's go back. So, we pull the boss, and we get our dark side, we get our blood weapon. The first thing that we do after this is actually a plunge into delirium. Now, the plunge is to get the plunge on cooldown. I just like having the plunge on cooldown so I'm not wasting anything. And I think it helps for my weaving later as well, just to get that one out of the way. I also pop a very early delirium here. I pop it right after the Siphon Strike. The reason why is because this delirium sets the course for the rest of the deliriums in the fight. Um, we try and do our reopeners on Alex normal when he first comes back after Brute Justice and Cruise Chaser. And to get a delirium consistently on that reopener, I found that I needed to use delirium this early, or else the way that we push the bosses, it would not always be back up for that potion, and I really wanted it to be in that potion consistently. So I made it this early, and I will stress that I keep it on cooldown going up until that point, and even further beyond as well. I don't really hold it. Um, but while I say that for Delirium, there are other things that I do hold, and I want to highlight those as well. So we go through here, and the next thing you'll see is after that first Blood Spiller, we actually use Blackest Night, and we double weave it with our Reprisal up here, right? And there's a couple reasons for this. So when I first started this fight, um, anyone who's done this fight or seen this fight, they know there's a tank buster right at the start here on the main tank. When I first started, I started with a mentality to use, it's a tank buster. Let's use a big cooldown for it. I started out with Shadow Wall just to try and get it on cooldown as fast as possible, get as many uses throughout the fight. It made sense to me, but I found better uses for Shadow Wall, and I found better uses, or a better use of cooldowns for this tank buster. I found that on Dark Knight, it's better to use, if you're pulling the boss, of course, it's better to use just a Blackest and Reprisal for this tank buster, and that's for two reasons. One, obviously, to mitigate the damage. That's all you really need, and the Reprisal will actually last if you pop it after your third GCD, assuming you do an unmanned And let's just take that out of the GCD timer. So hard slash, siphon strike, and a soul eater or blood spiller. Those 3 GCDs. If you do it after that, it will last until it will fall off when the cascade is going off. So you'll actually get 2 uses out of that reprisal: block your tank buster and block a raid wide, which I think is good. So that's kind of what I use for this first buster. You see, I don't really take that much damage from it. You also see here, I pop a Dark Mind into a Rampart here. This is another twofold thing. I mean, the Dark Mind is kind of just to block the cascade damage, but the Rampart is the twofold thing here. It blocks the cascade damage that goes off, but this Rampart will also last for the next buster that is coming up off of Living Liquid. So you're getting more use out of your cooldowns, and I think that's a really important thing to know right off the bat going into this fight. You want to use your cooldowns as effectively as possible. You don't want to use a 20-second buff in Rampart purely for a tank buster and ultimate. You know, you can do that stuff in Savage, but it doesn't go as well in ultimate. There's so much damage from, you know, raid wides and just auto attacks, especially in this fight, that, you know, you want to use your cooldowns for not just tank busters, but also auto attack damage a lot of the times, you know, and raid wides. So that's why I use this Rampart here. You know, and another thing you'll notice, I'll go back just a second. You'll notice that here, even though my opener is kind of ending, I still have 3 buffs that I haven't used even once. I haven't used Salted Earth, I haven't used Abyssal Drain, and I haven't used Living Shadow at all. Why is this? We'll start with Abyssal Drain first because it's the easiest. Abyssal Drain I save because I want to try and heal myself as much as possible after Cascade while also maximizing its damage as much as possible. I will be using it, you know, right after the Cascade goes off to hit Living Liquid and his hand. This not only helps, you know, even out their damage, it not only boosts Abyssal Drain's damage so that you hit 2 bosses at the same time, but it also heals you for 2 targets instead of just 1 to help heal the Cascade damage. The next thing I want to mention is Living Shadow. I'll save Living Shadow for when Cascade goes off as well. I actually double weave that with Abyssal Drain. Because the way that we do our strat for Living Liquid is we move Living Liquid to wherever the safe spot is. So over in this corner, wherever the safe spot is from 3 puddles, we move it to this corner, or whatever corner it is. Why does this apply to Living Shadow? Well, with this strat, if I pop Living Shadow earlier, and he's still going when you get to this phase, I had instances where he would spawn in and do his plunge and Abyssal Drain at the start, but then I would move the boss too far out of his hitbox because they, you know, our plan is to separate the hand and the Living Liquid at the start and then bring them together. And my Shadow would lag behind, and he would actually end up redoing his Abyssal Drain and plunge so that he could get to the boss again. So I cut into my Living Shadow's uptime and rotation by moving the boss. So that's why I save Living Shadow a little bit longer. And for Salted Earth, Salted Earth is kind of twofold. Actually, it's kind of like threefold. But I want to hit 2 targets for one thing. We're going to be hitting the hand and Living Liquid. But the main reason is because I found that if you use Salted Earth earlier in the rotation, yes, you will get it back faster towards the end of Living Liquid. But what will end up happening is you will get into a situation where if you use it that second time on Living Liquid, it will be weird for the rest of the fight. Most notably, like I said, for Delirium, that reopener on Alex, there were times when we would push the bosses in a way that I wouldn't get Salted Earth back for that reopener. And that's something I really wanted to have, was that Salted Earth in my potion. So I just timed it, you know, I held on to it for a little bit longer, just so it can line up. And it still lands in our Dancer buff as well. So I think it's fair. It gets 2 targets, it's better rotation-wise, and it still gets some of the buffs as well. So I'm just going to kind of let this play out. And you see I move the boss to that open spot, drop my salted earth, and you can see my shadow. There's another thing about this shadow um, holding that I want to um, address. If you hold your shadow until that cascade goes off and you spawn him when I do, he will spawn in a time that if you're doing the same strat as us, he will get this quietus on 2 targets. And he will not only get that quietus on 2 targets, he will also get this flood of shadow on 2 targets, which I think is really, really strong and really, really potent. And another thing about it is if you do it at the time that I do, not only do you get that AoE damage, but you will also get that AoE damage out before these jagged dolls spawn, which means you don't have to worry about cleaving the jagged dolls of your DPS and messing up their rotation because they're trying to get it to a certain HP for a clean feed. You get your AoE out of the way and you don't have to worry about blowing these up, which I think is really good. I really like this living shadow timing. And I think it sets a good course for the rest of the fight too. So we'll kind of go here. One thing I want to note for this tank buster right here, you'll see my rampart is still going, right? But this Blackest, and I'm gonna harp on Blackest throughout this fight. Blackest is extremely, extremely strong. You want to use it as much as possible to block as much damage as possible. One of my healers said a line that stuck with me through all of Prague. He said, you know, you don't always have to mitigate the big damage. Just as long as you mitigate some damage, you'll be doing good. And I think that's a good mindset to have, especially for a fight like this. You don't always have to mitigate. You don't always have to mitigate everything perfectly. But as long as you're mitigating, you know, let's say you block 2 auto attacks completely, you know, and then you take a tank buster raw. Well, you still have all the HP that you would have lost from the auto attacks because you completely blocked them and negated them. So the tank buster becomes a lot less scary because you have more HP going into it, if that makes sense. But regardless, I kind of went on a tangent about Blackest Night there. The thing I wanted to point up here is your timing for this Blackest for Living Liquid's tank buster and the Hands tank buster is when you see the animation for the Living or the Liquid hand and the Hand of Parting go out. That's your timing for Blackest because the tank buster's coming right after that, you know, here. And another thing I want to notice that you can or note that's coming up right here after that Blackest proc, Flood of Shadow. Flood of Shadow is extremely good in Living Liquid, but you have to play it smart. I and many other Dark Knights that I've seen have used this to try and hit Living Liquid in the hand, which is good. It does more damage than just using Edge on Living Liquid, and you help to keep these 2 bosses even. But you have to be careful here because there are Jagged Dolls at play, and you don't want to cleave a Jagged Doll. I have cleaved a Jagged Doll, and I've taken it off of our Samurai and killed it, and wiped the raid because I Flood of Shadow. So make sure that if you're going to use Flood of Shadow in this phase with the Jagged Dolls, that you direct yourself in a way. Flood always goes in a straight line, so this one's going to go like this, which dodges both of these, and these aren't even a factor. So you'll see me do like this little side step. If I go back just a little bit, you'll see me after I take this tank buster. I'll make sure that these guys are safe. These guys aren't going to get hit by my tank buster. And then once that goes off, I do that little side step. This is just habit. To make sure that I point myself in a way that my flood will go through both of these, but not any of the Jagged Dolls. And then you'll also see me move to the left here because I'm dodging this luminiferous aetherplasm. It's not a lot of damage, it's like 4k or something. And you're definitely not going to die unless you take 2. But, you know, just try and dodge as much damage as possible. So I moved to the side there, and then I kind of moved back for where I want to move later. So, you know, the first feed goes out here, and this is where I'm going to use Shadow Wall, because there's another buster coming here, but I also wanted to save this Shadow Wall for this buster, even though I know the Blackest timing for it, because what I want to do, what I want to accomplish with this is I want to also block some of the feeds of the Jagged Dolls 3 and 4 that will be coming later. And you'll see that after this tank buster here, with the Blackest and the Shadow Wall, and I move into the middle, there's going to be feeds going out here, right there, and then there's another one coming in right there. I want to try and block as much of that damage as possible too, because we had a lot of issues in Prague where we would try and take that damage unmitigated without a Shadow Wall or a Rampart, and I would end up dying to like the autos or the blast because there was just so much damage going out on the party that they couldn't focus on the tank. So I try to mitigate that as much as possible. Kind of go in here. One thing I do want to note about your AoE rotation on Dark Knight and I think all the other tanks besides Warrior. Make sure you check the GCD timing on your AoE rotation, because I found out just recently that this GCD timer for some of the tanks is not the same as your normal GCD. My normal GCD, like I mentioned before, is 2.39. These are at like 2.50 or something. So it's really easy to miss your blood weapon procs in this. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. It's not that big of a deal, but it's something that, you know, if you're consistently missing it, that's probably why, if you're trying to AoE these ads, or this boss in this ad. AoEing is good. It is a DPS increase for it, and it helps keep them together in HP. But just watch out for that in Blood Weapon. Another thing here you'll see is this Blackest Night. Like I said, use Blackest Night, you know, as much as possible. Mitigate as much damage as possible in this fight. Your healers will like you a lot more. I swear they will, because there's a lot of raid wide damage that they have to deal with, and the auto attack damage in this fight is insane, especially on Brute Justice and Brute Chaser. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous in a good way. I like it, but it's just a lot of damage. So you need to make sure that you're doing as much mitigation as you can and doing your part to keep yourself alive. Don't just, you know, force your healers into having to constantly watch you all the time. So, you know, a Black is here just to block some more damage, block some of the Protean wave. Doing my rotation here. And then we're going into these splashes in the next cascade with tethers. One thing I want to mention here, I'm going to put up Reprisal and Dark Missionary. Dark Missionary is really, really strong in this fight. Dark Missionary and Heart of Light, if you have Gunbreaker, really, really strong. It can cover multiple mechanics, and you're going to see this play out right here. And if you time Dark Missionary in a way like I do here, you can block the tether, you can block the splashes, and you can block the cascade if you time it correctly, as you see here. Also for the tethers, we use Living Dead on it and Hollowed. Dark Knight could easily cover this with Dark Mind and Blackest if you choose to do so, but we just decided to, you know, use Living Dead here to make it, you know, easier. We figured out the timings really early on, and we just decided that was the best course of action. The only reason we don't use Hollowed as well is because we like to use Hollowed for the first Buster in Alex. So yeah, that's pretty much our rotation for these two tethers. So let's see. I'm just gonna kind of let this go through now. There's not a whole lot. You'll see me throw out another Blackest here on my co-tank, just to help him out. Like I said, he's not involving this, so as much damage as possible reduction for him is good. Right there, you kind of saw me do a little sidestep. That was just to hit a Flood of Shadow on the hand. We had instances in the past where the hand was kind of out of the range of Flood, so I used, I got into a habit of just walking towards the hand to hit them both. One thing here, going back, you'll see another Blackest here. I like to time it after his second auto attack here, because you can block his third auto attack, and then the Hand of Pain or Hand of Parting, whatever, goes out right here. That will always pop your Blackest if you time it correctly. So you don't have to really worry about it. Plus that auto attack, it always pops. One other thing I want to mention here is the delirium. Like I said, as soon as it comes off cooldown, we're using that. We want to keep that on cooldown from the start because we want it to line up for that reopener in Alex. So I'm gonna, mention that whenever I see it come off cooldowns, that I'm using it on cooldown. Keep using Flood of Shadow. You're gonna see this rampart right here. This rampart is just because I bait this water jet right here, and I take a couple autos before we go into limit cut. It's not really big, but like I said, mitigate as much damage as possible if you can. So just pop that there, and you'll see this salted earth come up. And I'll kind of go over a couple things before we go into limit cut here. And another thing before I go into this, I'm not going to really spend a whole bunch of time on mechanics in this fight. I kind of just want to focus on tanks and Dark Knight specific things, not really mechanics. There's a lot of guides out there for mechanics in this fight, and they can do a lot better job than I can. But yeah, so I want to save Salted Earth here because not only will I not get the full duration, the boss is about to die, but it also if I use it here, it's going to mess up my rotation for the rest of the fight. I'm not going to get it consistently on Alex for my reopener, and I don't want that. So I just hold on to it here. I never really saw a big damage loss from not using it here. If anything, I saw more of a damage gain because, like I said, it lines up better later in the fight. Another thing here is this 3000 mana right here. You can use this on Living Liquid, but I started to not by the end of progression. I think it's better to save this for a flood on Brute Justice and Cruise Chaser to try and damage them as much as possible together when they're together in that phase. Plus, it's just more damage overall on two targets. And the only other thing I really want to mention on this is try to go into the next phase with at least 50 gauge because you're going to want to use your Living Shadow as soon as it comes off cooldown going into the next phase. So just have 50 gauge. I said that was the last thing, but there is something else I want to kind of add. If you do, you're still learning Living Liquid, your damage isn't as high as our group, and you start getting the splashes and stuff, it's good to use Blackest and Dark Mind on those splashes. I kind of always hold on this Dark Mind just in case something happens, someone dies or whatever, and we have to go into that phase just so you don't die. There were so many times, we even made a meme about it. One of my friends made a meme about me getting swiped at the very end before a limit cut because they were just trying to AoE heal and I didn't get enough healing and I just died at the end. And we had to wipe because I didn't have a number. So yeah, save this Dark Mind for those splashes in case you need it. And Blackest, like I said, use Blackest, abuse Blackest. It is such a good cooldown. It's so readily available. Use it. Okay, so we're kind of just going to go in this, let this play out, and go into limit cut. Like I said, I'm not going to really talk about the mechanics in this. It's mostly just going to be, letting it play through and, just let it play through. There are a lot of different ways to do limit cut and all the mechanics in this fight, to be honest. All these like team mechanics, and do what works best for your group. I think this strat is pretty good though if you want to look over it. But yeah, so we're getting into this now, and with Brute Justice Cruise Chaser, like I said, go into this with at least 50 gauge, because like you can see, the Living Shadow is back off down here. And I think a good time to use this Living Shadow is as soon as the 8 dash goes off. Be as close to the middle as possible so that he doesn't have to move his follow. But once that 8 dash goes off, that's kind of your cue to use Living Shadow. You go into here, Cruise Chaser spawns, Brute Justice. once he kind of stops spinning and he kind of just, starts standing forward and he's just dropping, that's when I like to use my salted earth. I think that time is good, and I think that time is good for the rest of the fight too. Um, that's very minimal, but that's something I wanted to mention. So this starting phase, the only thing I really want to mention for damage here, I pop a reprisal for this whirlwind. The only thing I really want to mention for damage is I like to just spam flood on these two, to just get as much damage on them as possible while they're together, like I said earlier. Another thing is popping a Blackus here, either for the whirlwind or for the auto attacks. Cruise Chaser, this is when the auto attack damage becomes really, really crazy. And it can kill you. It can kill you, especially with so much movement in fight. It can kill you. So try and use Blackus to help you with auto attacks when you can, and make when you can as much as possible. So you see a Blackus here, and I'm just spamming floods. I like to keep my cooldowns. I like to keep on the normal rotation instead of the AOE. The AOE does do more, but like I said earlier, the AOE rotation is on a slower GCD, and you're more prone to lose your blood weapon proc. I say this, but I end up losing my blood weapon proc anyway because I'm bad. But yeah, I like to just do standard rotation here, even though I'm hitting one target, and just focus on blood spam for the AOE. Use that Blackus, and there's one little thing I want to mention here that's just raid area awareness. For chakrams in this, this is kind of just an overall tank thing, especially for if you're tanking Cruise Chaser. It's less for Brute Justice because I don't think Brute Justice casts anything when you move to dodge chakrams. But Cruise Chaser will spawn the Hawk Blasters while you're moving. But you can keep uptime on him if you move fast enough for the chakrams. So knowing if you're handling Cruise Chaser, if you're that tank, knowing when the chakrams spawn and moving ASAP will help you and your DPS keep uptime. You'll see this with me and my samurai when we move for the chakrams. The reason why I bring this into so much detail is because there's a really little thing you can do here that makes a big difference. And this is just something as a player and as a tank. The chakrams in this phase, they will always spawn either the cardinals or the inner cardinals, but they'll always spawn opposite to each other. So like if one spawns north, the other one will always be south. So they'll always crisscross like that. So what I do is I set up my camera in a way that I can see 3 different chakram positions at the same time. And you'll see it here. I kind of turn my camera right here, right? So now I can see this south part, and I know that if it lands south, the other one's north. I can move this way to be safe. If it spawns here, I know the other one's here, and I can move. Well, I move north, but you can move south as well to dodge it. Or the tricky one with the camera is actually the northeast and southwest position. If I position my camera in this way, and you can do this, for any inner cardinal around where you're facing, on the little circle here, you can see it drop down through your camera. You see that right there? Let's see if I can get a better freeze frame. Right there. I'm so bad at catching it. Right there. Okay. Yeah. Hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. Where there's just a chakram that falls right here, and you can see that in your camera. So I immediately know, okay, I can move, and I know where I need to move away from. And this helps me continue to get uptime, and my samurai to continue to get uptime on the boss, even though it has to cast while we're moving. That's really important for keeping your GCD rolling, keeping damage up. Another thing there is just, that delirium, it's on cooldown. As soon as it comes up, use it on cooldown. Going into Photon here, this is when I use my first Dark Missionary of this phase. There's 2 Dark Missionaries in this phase, and I think these are the best times to use them. I use this dark machinery here because if you use it once that photon goes off, that's kind of your cue to use it. It will last to the first lightning and first water to mitigate that, and it'll come back up again for the double whirlwind for Cruise Chaser at the end. So you can mitigate a lot of damage with that cooldown because you can abuse the length of that cooldown. To cover multiple mechanics or just get it on cooldown faster and still cover what you want it to. And since we're all stacked together right here, everybody gets it. So no matter where you are for a mechanic, you'll get some reduction, which I think is good. So we move here, past Nissy, and you'll see me moving here into position. And one thing I want to bring up here, since I handle Cruise Chaser, I don't like to move this boss. Our water stack that will freeze is going to be over here. That's really the only time I like to move this boss. I like to do all my mechanics in this corner. And you'll kind of see how I have my own pathways, and I let other people pass around my pathways as I spin the boss around to do and handle multiple mechanics. So here, I just swap them to the side and get the spin crusher away from the party. I also pop a Blackus here. I know there's going to be auto attack damage after that spin crusher, and I also get lightning first from Spice over here. And I want to mitigate that damage as much as possible. Also, you'll see this rampart come up right here. This rampart, like I said, use your cooldowns to cover as much stuff as possible. Don't use them for just singular things. This rampart, and this is for Brute Justice Tank as well. Rampart is on such a low cooldown that if you use it before or during the first lightning and water, it will come back up for the double rocket punch at the end. And this is really good because the only thing that you really need for that double rocket punch is a rampart and your mini cooldowns like Blackus, Heart of Stone, Raw Intuition, and Shell Troll. So you can get 2 rampart skills in this phase. But that's not the only thing. That also opens up, since you only need that and your mini cooldown that'll always be back up for the double rocket punch, that allows you to use your other cooldowns for other things in this phase, aka auto attack damage and raid blind. In my case, mines. But you'll see here, I pop that rampart and the Blackus. Block damage from the lightning. We did have issues early where I would die. Healers were trying to figure out what they wanted to do for healing. I would die to lightnings, either the first or the second. Well, I don't think I ever died the first, but the second, because of no cooldowns from me and them not being prepared for how much damage it actually did. And you'll see me here. There's one thing I want to note. This is kind of the little lane I was talking about. After this goes off, I will move here, and I will stop here for a second. Right there. I'll stop here for a second. That is because I know that my samurai is going to be coming from this stack, and he will always land here, assuming he's with the stack and not lightning. He'll always move here, and he kind of stops here and then moves towards the middle for his enumeration later. And I also know that ranged are going to be coming around this way because we do our baits here, and then they come in for their puddles right there. So I kind of wait and just, this is my lane inside the boss's hitbox. This is my lane to not pass Nissy. Because everything in this phase revolves around Nissy. You have to respect Nissy. You have to respect people's space with Nissy. So that you don't do wrong passes, or else you can't make it through the fight. So this is my lane inside. And I use this to let my DPS get into their positions. And then once everybody has moved past me, that's when I move into my position here, just in case I need to freeze this water, which I actually have to do here. You'll also see in a second, I pop Shadow. Like I said before, you don't need the Shadow for double rocket punch. So I'm using this Shadow Wall for auto attacks from Cruise Chaser, and it will last me to these 2 mines that I'm going to have to take. And if I get lightning, it will also cover that. So I also pop a Dark Mine here. This Dark Mine, I feel, is kind of not situational, but it's up for debate. I used to save this Dark Mine for the lightning that I passed here second, when I told you before that I started to have issues living through that lightning. But I also figured out that if you pop Blackus here ASAP on cooldown using the rotation I do, it'll come back for this. And I always have mana from this Blood Weapon plus Karma's Bit to use a Blackus here. So I just opted to use Blackus here and just super cooldown Ice if I get it, and super cooldown this. And I also pop a Blackus here too, regardless if I get the Ice or not. I also get an intervention for the mines. But this is kind of playing into the thing I mentioned before, where it's like use your cooldowns to block some of the damage, even if it's not the biggest hits. So the biggest hits here for me are the mines, right? But I pop my Blackus early, not only because I want the now I'm gonna leave this a little bit just so the screen isn't so blurry. But I know my Blackus, I want it to be back up here, so I need to use it ASAP anyway. But even if this Blackus dies before I go into these mines, because I super cooldown with Rampart and Shadow Wall and Dark Mine for these mines, I will still be fine even if that Blackus pops, which it does to the ice going into the mines. And then I go in here and I'm still good because I super cooldown. That's one of the things where I said before, just like my healer said, just mitigate some of the damage. Even if you don't mitigate the big hits, mitigate some, and it will help you in the long run. So you see here, I kind of still have this lane around this area. I'm kind of just spinning the boss around, positioning it for different mechanics. And right here, I'm kind of swinging around middle because I'm coming to meet whichever healer is going to be taking lightning off of me here. But this is also pre-positioning for the blasted shield in a second. And I'll kind of let this play out here. And okay, so you see that lightning go out. It doesn't really do that much damage. Why? Because I saved a Blackus. Like I said, keep a cooldown for everything. Cooldowns, they're there to mitigate damage. Use your cooldowns. Abuse Blackus Knight. Abuse Blackus Knight. Abuse Blackus Knight. It's very strong. It's on low cooldown. All you need is some mana, and you're good to go. So use that to mitigate extra damage. So let's see. Next thing coming up is going to be the Blasted Shield. Like I said, I have pre-positioning for this. We're going into Limit Cut, and the way we handle this is I will pre-position him facing middle, and I will slightly move back into max melee range and let my Samurai move in front of me so that he can hit the shield, and we also get range support as well. It just makes it cleaner so everybody can hit this if they have some range. But it's mostly on me and my Samurai, like the main dudes, to tackle the shield. But that's just a minor positioning thing to help us kill the shield. I also like to save my proc of edge right here from that Blackus earlier on the lightning for the shield. So we pop the shield here, and there's two things I want to mention as soon as it pops. One, I want to reprisal the whirlwind that's coming up. You always cast whirlwind after that blasted shield. If you reprisal early enough on that whirlwind, you can actually reprisal later for Brute Justice Super Jump plus his auto attack, Cruise Chaser's auto attacks on you. Just some extra mitigation that you can get, an extra use of reprisal that I think is pretty decent. Help out your range live through the Super Jump. I mean, it's not like it's going to kill him anyway, but it kind of prepares you more for the whirlwinds that come afterwards. The other thing I want to mention is Nissi. For our lineup, you can see it in a second here. For our lineup for Nissi, at first they wanted to give me the closest spot to Cruise Chaser, right behind the ice. But I found that it made us more consistent if I just let them have free reign over, people go where they feel most comfortable behind the ice. Whoever gets there first and they feel most comfortable in that spot, let them go there. And I will adjust. So the reason why I bring that up is because here I kind of wait on my Nissi pickup. I kind of wait a second for my Nissi. You see this? And then I pick up my Nissi. Because what I want to do is I want to make this Nissi last as long as possible for when I have to inevitably run from my boss to potentially the farthest person with Nissy on the other side to either give them Nissy or pick it up for myself to finish off the mechanic at the end. So I like to pick that up as late as possible, personally. Another black is here, just to mitigate some more damage, block the whirlwind damage, block some auto damage. You know, there's a water coming up here, there's lightning. You don't want your healers to have to babysit you here, so use Blackest, help them out, mitigate some more damage. Especially if you have Nissy, you're taking Nissy ticks. You know, help them out, pop Blackest. More rotation stuff here. I think I pop another Blackest. Yeah, another Blackest just for auto attacks. And this is my next Living Shadow. I feel like this Living Shadow is up for debate, but at the same time, I feel like it's kind of not. I feel like the reason why you wouldn't use this Living Shadow here is because you want to save it for your reopener, which I can understand. But I feel like if you save it for that, you lose one instance of it, because you will either get a Living Shadow here, and then right before Wormhole, and then in the burn phase, or you will get it on your reopener and have to either choose to use it, you know, before Wormhole or after Wormhole, or on the burn phase. So you lose a Living Shadow, and I think losing a Living Shadow is worse than just trying to get it in that burst window. So I use an extra one here. Like I said before, using Delirium on cooldown. This is all for my reopener. Getting that Delirium on cooldown. Like I said, this is why I picked up my Nissy later, because I have to move to the third person here, which is Foisu, our Dragoon, to give him the Nissy. So I want that Nissy to be lasting as long as possible, so that I can have enough time to get over to him and give it to him. Pop Sprint, if you have it, it's a little useful there. But yeah, so for here, it's kind of standard stuff for the rest of this Justice Cruise Chaser phase. You know, as you can see, Rampart's coming back up for this double rocket punch, as I said before. And Blackest is the only other thing I really need. And you can see the damage is minimal from it. As I was saying before, this Reprisal is coming back up because I used relatively early on that Whirlwind earlier, and you can Reprisal both of the bosses here and save your ranged over there a little bit of damage. Here, I also like that Reprisal because it can block some of this auto attack damage that's going out here. I pop a Blackest here for the incoming Whirlwind, and this is where my next Dark Mission is. You'll see me moving towards the middle of the field here. This is because I want to give Rai, our range over here, Dark Missionary as well. So I will run out and give him, you know, he jumps into it too. But I will run out and make sure that he gets Dark Missionary as well for these double Whirlwinds, so that he's safe too. And then, you know, right here, it's just pretty much BSing. I like to go into this phase with as little gauge as possible. I don't really like above 50 because of just how the reopening works. But I mean, that's a minor thing as well. So here we're going into stasis. Like I said, I'm not going to really talk about this. Pop before your stasis goes off. It'll keep the cooldown right there. You don't have to worry about it later. It'll last your whole turn. So you see here, you know, that Salted Earth that I talked about so much. That Salted Earth timing. I have it perfectly here. As soon as Alex comes with all the raid buffs and my pot, I have Salted Earth. And look at what's coming up as well. Delirium. Both of these things are going to come up in this reopener, and I can do as much damage as possible. Even though one mistake I actually mess up here. I actually, for some reason, I don't know, when I went in here to evoke the boss, I just forgot that I had this last Blood Spiller. I used a Siphon Strike. It's a mistake on my part, but you should be doing another Blood Spiller here and then ending on Soul Eater at the end of your potion and the phase. But it's kind of like backwards for me. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the stasis and that Alex part. We're moving into Inception here. There's not a whole bunch of tanking things to talk about. The only thing I really want to mention here Um, I guess going back here for a second, kind of leave this phase at 50 or I guess 30 to 50 gauge, at least 30. The reason why is because you want, after this inception phase ends, you're going to want to Living Shadow before Wormhole. You want 50 gauge for that. And you can get 20 gauge off of the True Heart once it spawns before it runs away. So as long as you have 30 gauge and you're not going to overcap, so like 30 to 80 going into Inception, you're good. Um, but try and stay on the lower side too. There's one thing coming up here. There's a dark missionary I use just on cooldown from the double whirlwinds. It's not really that big of a deal. You don't get this sometimes with our pushes. I don't actually get it there, or it doesn't mitigate as much damage. It's not that big of a deal. Those flamethrowers aren't that much damage. It's just an extra use I found in the fight, and it comes back up for the Mega Holies when I want to use it again. So we're kind of going in this phase now, this little mini phase after Inception. And you'll see here, once I move in to dodge the super jump, I'll use my Living Shadow to get that spawn going already. And I'll also pop Shadow Wall and Dark Mind. This is kind of optional, but I like it. I like to survive through this chassis heat before my Living Dead goes off, just to make the benediction timing easier on my healer. After the cleaves, he doesn't have to really worry about, oh, I have to time this directly after the third cleave or else he'll die. You give a little bit of extra time there that he can, weave in Benny when he feels fit. So I like to live through this first hit, since I have all these cooldowns that I'm not really using anyway. And also, you can see again, Salted Earth, Delirium timing. It comes up for this little mini phase, you get the full duration on both of them, you get all your hits. This is all going back to Living Liquid. You have to plan this stuff all the way back at Living Liquid. That's why my opener has changed like 4 or 5 times, because I'm just trying to get it right for the rest of the fight. I want it played out right for the rest of the fight. And that's why I harped on it so much at the start, because I just wanted it right throughout the fight. The only other thing I can really think of for this phase right here, for Wormhole, is I like to try to expend as much resources as possible. I kind of expend a little bit too much mana here. I'll highlight why, because it's kind of a mistake on my part. But I like to expend all these resources, because when he comes back after Wormhole, and I'll kind of just let this play out because I'm not going to really explain Wormhole. When he comes back after Wormhole, you get another blood weapon there, and you gain a lot of resources. So you don't want to go into that with like max mana and max gauge, because you're going to overcap it. It's going to be really hard to try and do whatever you want to do correctly there. If you don't expend your resources correctly going into that phase. So it's just Wormhole. And this is the thing I wanted to mention earlier. You see me targeting Spice here. I like to try and target whoever I see is lowest. I probably should actually went for Rai or Fuisu here, but I actually don't have enough mana to Blackus him here because I use too much in that phase. So that's kind of a misstep on my fault. If you can Blackus someone here, it sometimes helps keep them alive. They don't catch a heal when you're running to the middle for the stack. You can save a life with it, so that's good if you have the mana. We're going in here, and this is where the Mega Holies are coming up, and this is another time where Dark Missionary shines. We kind of debated how we wanted to handle this Dark Missionary, but we settled on the double Mega Holies. I think it's really good. Block a lot of damage on 2 Mega Holies, and I think that's just really good. A good use of Dark Missionary. You don't really need it for the burn phase, so we just kind of use it there. I actually make another mistake here. I kind of just missed some GCDs on Alex. I thought he was already gone, and I was looking for people to actually Blackus for this starting J Storm here. Here once again, Delirium on cooldown. getting a mini opener on here. If you've been using Living Shadow the same way I have up until here, you could actually use it again right on this burn phase. It'll come back up. The cutscene for Alexander transforming, as cool as it is extremely long, and you can use that to your advantage and get another Living Shadow in. It'll come back up from my opener on perfect, so that's good. So here, it's kind of like for Wormhole. You want to expend as much resources as possible here. The only thing I would say don't expend to the fullest is try and keep at least 50 gauge. And that's because you want to go into Perfect Alex with at least 50 gauge so that you can use your living shadow as soon as it comes off cooldown. And I like to stay closer to 50 gauge as well than higher, because it's very easy to overcap going into Perfect, especially if your Living Shadow is up directly when you start the phase. And you kind of want to save it for your potion anyway. But so yeah, we're kind of going into Perfect Alex now, and there's not a whole lot of tank and Dark Knight related things in this phase. There's one main thing I want to focus on for Dark Knight, or I want to highlight, which is just dumb, ridiculous Dark Knight can do. But there's not a whole lot, but I will point out the little things that I do in this phase as Dark Knight and as tank in general. So yeah, just this cutscene, I'm really glad that they put this cutscene in. It looks so cool. I love this pose that he does at the end. It's really majestic and it's really awesome. I like that they do that much stuff with Ultimate now. But anyway, you start out here, you get pretty much a reopener. And I'll kind of stop on this for a second. Let's see, I'll go back a little bit. I like to start here, just provoke to get the boss. I start with the boss in this phase. Go into getting my dark side up with Edge and the Blood Weapon. And then I like to pot after Siphon Strike, because you want to get 2 pots in this phase, so you use your pot ASAP. And after the Soul Eater right here, I like to double weave my Shadow and Delirium just to get them going as fast as possible, to get as many uses as possible. And this is also why I was saying try to go in as close to 50 gauge as possible. Try not to be over 60, because you will overcap here if you're at like 70 or above. If you do the same opener I do. So yeah, we're kind of going into this for the final word. Like I said, there's not a whole bunch of tank and Dark Knight stuff here to talk about. All these mechanics are kind of shared with your party, so everybody can get anything. So it's not really like, it's not really like tank specific, I guess. But here, this is the first Dark Missionary I use of this phase. I like to use Dark Missionary on these stacks right here. And this falling as well. I also like to use Dark Mind here, and if I have the Mana Blackest, this is just another thing where there's a lot of damage going on in the party, and people have to spread out, and you don't want your healers to have to babysit you, just because you're taking auto attacks as a tank. You have more cooldowns than other people, and you're not really using them. This phase is extremely long, and the tank busters are split up and get invulned anyway. So use your cooldowns to help your healers not have to babysit you the whole fight. But like I said before, Fate Calibration Alpha here, there's not a whole bunch of stuff to talk about for tanks here. One thing I'll mention here though is refood. I noticed this after I killed it. My food actually falls off towards the end of Enrage in this fight, and it was kind of nerve-wracking knowing that I didn't refood going into this poll. But yeah, refood. Anyway, the reason why I paused it here is because we're coming up on the first Tank Buster. And for this first Tank Buster, I actually take it solo. And this was the big thing I wanted to mention. Dark Knight has so many cooldowns, and Blackest Night and Dark Mind are so good for a buster like this, that you can actually take the one buster that's designed to be a stack soak and then a tank swap, you can take that by yourself if you throw enough cooldowns at it. We throw all my cooldowns and like an intervention, maybe a clemency, and like X-Cog, medicine, stuff like that at this tank buster, and Dark Knight can just take it by itself. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of crazy. When my co-tank told me that I could do this, I was like, "Are you sure, dude?" I was kind of scared. I thought I was just gonna die, but it really doesn't do as much damage as you think it's gonna do. It's just Dark Knight's really good. Dark Knight's really good for this fight, and it's really good for that part specifically. Um, Here's my next Living Shadow time. This is actually the last Living Shadow you're going to get until the end, because you want to save the next one for your pot. So if you see me sitting on it later, that's the reason why I'm sitting on it for my pot. And here we're just kind of going into Fate Calibration Beta. The only really tank related thing here that I like to do on Dark Knight, that we kind of agreed on to do here on Dark Knight, is going into the end of Fate Calibration cast. You pop Dark Missionary, because everyone's kind of stacked together, and it will help mitigate some of the damage from the tethers and the stack before either another stack optical sight or spread optical sight. So your healers can more spot heal instead of having to heal everybody here, and you'll see this play out where it's just, we have a lot of cooldowns going in there, and things just don't hurt as much before the optical sight, and it makes it a lot safer for us going into it. So Fate Calibration Beta is ending now. Cooldowns are back up. Use your cooldowns because that comes. Lavis, my co-tank, is taking the next tank buster. He's just gonna hollowed. I don't really have to do much here besides just do damage. Invoke at the right time so he doesn't die to an auto. And once this is finished, we'll be heading to the first shrine. The only thing that I do here on Black Knight, on Dark Knight, is I do a reprisal for the shrine stack damage. It might be useful to also do a Blackest, because you'll see here that our dancer actually dies. We're still not really sure why he died here, but for some reason he did die. I'm not sure if he missed a shield or what, but he dies here to this shrine. But it does a decent amount of damage even with the reprisal. And I'll use Dark Missionary on the next one. This is going to be my Living Dead on this next tank buster. And like I said before, if you see that Living Shadow there, it's because I'm saving it for the end, for when I pot and all the raid buffs are back up. Because that's going to be your last burn before Rage. So now we're going into second shrine, and once this is, going through my mitigation, my help for this one is going to be a Dark Missionary. That's going to be my help for this next shrine to help us mitigate and survive through the stack hit. I also popped my pot here. I think I should have delayed this pot a little bit longer. Personally, now that I seen the fight, I kind of got anxious there and just wanted to use it. But I should have saved it a little bit longer. But that's it. Pretty much just have your cooldowns ready for this pot. Save your stuff for this pot so you can get, as much of a burst in this last window as possible to try and burn the boss and get his damage as low as possible. But that's pretty much Alexander Ultimate for tanks and for Dark Knight specifically. The main things I just want to stress is, help your healers, use your cooldowns effectively. Don't play this like Savage. This isn't Savage's Ultimate. Things do a lot more damage in this fight. Use your cooldowns to cover multiple things in this fight. Don't just use it purely for the tank busters, or like the mines or whatever. Use it for multiple things. If you're on Dark Knight, abuse Blackest, abuse Blackest, abuse Blackest. Blackest is such a good cooldown. It is such a good cooldown, and it will help you so much in mitigating damage and helping your healers keep the party alive and not have to worry constantly about, is he going to die to an auto attack? Is he going to die to this raid wide? Help your healers out. Besides that, look seriously at your opener. Like I said, I changed openers a lot. Think seriously about your opener and see how your team is pushing phases, and see, how things are going to line up for your group. You might not kill things as fast as we do. You might kill things faster than we do, and push timings are going to be different for you for every group. So plan your cooldowns in a way that works best for your group, but try and really think about, how not only the cooldowns are really, like, you can have an amazing opener for Living Liquid, and then your cooldowns are just messed up for the rest of the fight. You don't want that. You want consistent damage throughout the fight to meet these DPS checks and consistently, do as much damage as you can. But I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. Be on point with your positioning. This is a very positioning heavy fight. Be heavy on your positioning. Make it as easy for yourself and your DPS. And like I said, help your healers, help your team. Mitigate what you can for yourself and for others. Blackest is not just for you. You can use it on other people as well. Help them survive as well. And yeah, I just hope this video, if you watch it to the end, I hope it helps you with tanking this fight and dark knighting this fight. I hope it gives you kind of a perspective on how I thought about this fight and progression, and how I plan out my cooldowns, stuff like that. I just hope you can get something from this. If nothing else, use Blackest. Use Blackest Knight. Gosh dang it, that cooldown is, I swear, I have a great appreciation for Dark Knight and Blackest Knight after this. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it from me. I hope you learned something, and I hope this video was useful for you. And I hope this leads to some, as Xena would say, some sweet first clears. So yeah, good luck in Ultimate. It's a hard fight, but it's a fun fight. And I think if you make it to the end, you'll have a really fulfilling experience. So that's all for me. Good luck out there. That's all I got. See you later.